Hey guys, Brandon Kualis here, and in this video we're going to be talking about one of the most commonly asked questions that I get as a photographer and the myths surrounding that question. And the question is, what camera should I buy? Of all the choices out there, which one should I get? You know, a lot of people they come up to me and they look at my shots and they're like, "Wow, you've got some really nice shots there. Which camera are you using?" Because my pictures, they don't really turn out that great, and so I think there's something wrong with my camera, and I'd love to have them turn out like yours do. So which camera is it? Because I gotta know so that I can get something kind of like what you've got there. And when I hear that, I think about somebody like Michelangelo. Back in the day, I wonder if people came up to him and said, "Wow, Michelangelo, your paintings, they're just unbelievable. I've been practicing at home, but mine aren't even nearly as good as that. It's mostly just stick figures and things." So I got to know, like, which paintbrush are you using and what kind of paints have you got there? Because I really want my paintings to turn out like that. So, I got to get a piece of whatever it is you've got there equipment wise. The reality is that it's not the photographer or it's not the camera. It's the photographer that that makes the great photograph. It's the photographer's understanding of some of the basic concepts that we're going to cover in this course. Things like composition. How do you arrange your subject and your objects in such a way that it draws the viewer in? It's understanding lighting. How do you control and manipulate light so that you can create different emotional responses in the viewer? It's your understanding of things like aperture, shutter speeds, ISO, some of the mechanical controls of the camera, and how to leverage those to create the vision that you want to create, to have total control over that. So that should be somewhat comforting to know that it's not the camera. The reason why that should be comforting is because there are so many options out there, and it's a pretty big investment. So a lot of people, when they're going to purchase something like that, they're thinking, "Wow, what if I make the wrong decision? I mean, what if I get something that I'm really not happy with down the road?" Like I said, it doesn't matter. It's not the camera. A great photographer can take a camera like this. They could take this camera, or they could take this camera and walk away with an amazing image because they understand those concepts. So don't be afraid when you're going out there to make a purchase. Don't worry about making the wrong choice. As long as you get a decent camera, and I'm going to give you some ideas of what you might look at and choosing something decent, you'll make a good choice. So with that said, I want to talk about really three things that you need to be aware of as you're considering which camera you need to buy. I mean, we're not going to go over, you should get Nikon or Canon, or you should have, this cool feature, that cool feature, or, you got to have this new crazy bell and whistle thing. We're going to talk about some core things that you should consider. And hopefully this will guide some discussion as you go around to the camera stores to ask questions about your different camera options, or as you're looking online. So I want to talk about price. I want to talk about complexity, and I want to talk last of all about creative control. So let's jump into those. And I'm going to compare, as we do that, the two practical types of cameras that you should consider. I say too practical because there are a lot of options out there when it comes to cameras, but the reality is, for the everyday average run-of-the-mill good photographer that wants to walk away with great images, there's really only a couple of different cameras that you should consider camera types, and they're relatives. So we're going to compare the SLR camera, and its relative now would be, well, a recent relative within the last couple of years, it's kind of hot on the market right now, is the so this is the single lens reflex camera. Its relative is the what's that called, the mirrorless camera, which is basically the same kind of thing, except for it doesn't have a mirror in it, so it makes it a little quieter and less heavy. And we want to talk about the point and shoot, or its relative, the cell phone. So let's talk first about price. This is going to be a little more expensive or a lot more expensive. This is going to be less expensive. So you have to figure out what your budget is. Now, that's about all we really have to say with price ranges. I mean, this is going to range anywhere. The point and shoot camera is going to range anywhere from, $100 to maybe $800 or $900 for a really high-end point and shoot with a lot of control. This is going to cost you anywhere from $400 for the body, which I mean, I take the lens off. Here's the body. Here's the lens. Going to cost you around $400 maybe for the body, all the way up to $7,000. And the reality when you're looking at those price ranges is you're probably going to look at something in the range of $500 to $1,000 is going to suit you just fine. I mean, you're going to get a good camera for $500 to $1,000. You can go more than that if you want. If you really want to, throw a lot of money into it. I personally don't throw a lot of money because I'm a cave photographer and I beat the crap out of my camera. And I do not want to be beating the crap out of a $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 camera. That would stress me out a lot. So you can get something pretty good for $500 to $1,000. So that's price. Let's talk about complexity. This camera is going to be significantly more simple to operate and learn than something like this is going to be. There are a lot more features to this camera, and because of all those features, it's going to have a little bit more of a learning curve to it. However, the nice thing about more features and more complexity is there is more control over your shot. This camera, the point and shoot camera, like I said, in the lower cost range, you're going to have a very, very simple camera. You're going to have something that's as simple as a cell phone, which basically, you point, you push the button, and maybe if you download an extra app or something like that, you're going to have a little bit more, a little more control, but not a lot. This one in the higher end point and shoot range, you're going to have some of the manual settings that you have in this camera, but they're going to be more limited. With these, you have a lot of flexibility and a lot of options and a lot of features. So more complex, less complex. And the last thing that I want to bring up is creative control. So this camera you're going to have in the higher end cameras where you got some manual settings, you're going to have a little bit more creative control than you would for a lower end, like very inexpensive point and shoot camera. With an inexpensive point and shoot camera, I mean, it's point and shoot, and hopefully it's not too dark or too light. It's not, too out of focus, or there's a lot of variables that I said a great photographer can walk away with an amazing shot. That's because they understand the limitations of this, and they can look for conditions that would suit the photo well. So you're kind of limited in the lower end when it comes to creative control, very limited actually. But as you get up in the higher end, you've got a lot more creative control, but you're still, it's like a range. So with this on the high end, $800 point and shoot camera, your range is like this. Something like this, $500 to $1,000, and your range is huge. And then you start getting up into the like $8,000 range or $7,000 range for a camera, and it goes from something like this to maybe that. I mean, it's not a huge difference unless you're someone who's really nitpicking the photograph and the image quality and resolution and that sort of thing. And really, when it boils down to this, you can get a $500 camera body and a $2,000 lens, and it's really, the lenses are going to make a lot more difference than the body itself. So let's review those. This is the less expensive option. This is the more expensive option. This is less complex, and it gets up to maybe a pseudo complex when you get into the more expensive. This is more complex to very complex, and this has limited creative controls to some creative controls, and this one here has a lot of creative controls and the ability to have control over every aspect of your shot right here. So, personally for me, I'm going to always go with an SLR camera. And now with the recent, the mirrorless cameras, whenever I'm again in the market for a camera, it's probably something that I would consider. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some things to think about. Like I said in this video, we're not going to go into a lot of depth on, you should have this feature or that feature or whatever. And the reason for that is because what you need is going to vary. It's going to vary from one person to another. And the best way to find out, go talk to your local camera store and say, hey, I want to be able to shoot. I love landscapes, so I want to do landscapes. Or I like to shoot people. Or, I'm not really going to ever blow anything up. I mostly just want to post on Facebook. Give them an idea of what you want. Then they could present some options and say, hey, well, maybe given what you are saying you want to do and how big you want to blow them up and what you're going to use the pictures for, this is probably your best option. If you say, I want a lot of creative control, but I'm just posting on Facebook, they'd probably maybe recommend something like this. If you're saying, I want to do something like landscapes and some pseudo-professional portraits, then they might recommend something like this and give you several options from Nikon to Canon to Pentax to, who knows. And those options are you're going to make a good choice because, like I said, it's not the camera that makes the shot. It's the photographer. Let me say that one more time. It's not the camera that makes the great photograph. There is no good picture setting on this camera here or anywhere else. It's the photographer, and it's the knowledge of the concepts that we're going to be covering in this course. So I would invite you to maybe watch a couple of more videos to understand some of the the features of the SLR camera and cameras that have manual controls. Watch those, get a sense of maybe some features and what they do, and then that'll also help guide your decision as you go out to choose a camera. And like I said, you're going to make a great choice. So take your time, do some research, and you'll find a good camera for you. Hey guys, me again. There was one thing that I forgot to mention in the first part of this video, so here I am to mention it, and that is, so I'd said that, the camera doesn't matter. It's the photographer that makes the great shot. Regardless of the camera, a good photographer is going to walk away with a great shot. That said, as we go through this course, we are going to be focusing on using mostly an SLR camera, and we will focus completely on using manual settings in your camera to make shots. So if you have or planning on purchasing a camera and you get a low-end point and shoot or think you're going to use your cell phone, those cameras do not have manual settings. They don't have the ability to manually adjust the focus, the aperture, the ISO, and the shutter speed. And if you cannot do that, then as we go through this class and I give you some challenges to go out and use the manual settings, you're not going to be able to do it. So whatever camera you purchase for this course, you're going to want to make sure that it has manual settings, the ability to take a picture manually controlling the shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and focus. So with that said, we'll see you in the next video.